Minister Kan Kim Yeong.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, many members have spoken about CareShield Life, and I would like to thank all of them for their contributions. Young Singaporeans typically think about long-term care as something that's not important and not in their radar scan. And in fact, many of them regard such issues as issues for the old. And that is why it is important for us to address this issue now. And very often we only realize how important these issues are when we have to take care of someone who is severely disabled, our family members. As Dr. Chia's grandmother's experience have shown, often this happens quite suddenly and we are not prepared for it because we never planned for it. And therefore today I'm happy that we have this opportunity at this House to talk about CareShield Life. And I'm encouraged that members of this House have voiced support for the introduction of CareShield Life to provide better protection and greater assurance compared to the current ElderShield. Members have also made very thoughtful remarks and suggestions and shared concerns which Singaporeans might have. Some of these relate to the design of the scheme, who it should cover, its benefits, features, and how it will be managed. These were questions that are important, and there were also questions about affordability and concerns on how Singaporeans without CareShield Life or those who need additional help can be supported. My Senior Minister of State, Dr. Amy Khor, and Mr. Cheong Tat have addressed most of the concerns and questions raised. Allow me now to sum up the debate on long-term care and CareShield Life. First, CareShield Life will be an inclusive scheme. It will be more than just an insurance scheme, but a key pillar of our social safety net. This is why we are introducing universal coverage for future cohorts, Singaporeans born in 1980 or later, so that the scheme will cover all future generations, including those with pre-existing severe disabilities, as well as those who are low income who need it the most, as they will receive premium support. We have explained why it is not possible to make it mandatory for all Singaporeans in the existing cohort, meaning those who are born in 1979 or earlier, to join the scheme. We will, however, encourage them to do so with participation incentives. In line with our inclusive principle, those with pre-existing conditions but are not severely disabled will also be allowed to join the scheme. On affordability, some members of the House have raised concerns about what will happen if there are people who may not be able to afford their premiums. These include the self-employed, housewives, and the low income. I would like to assure members of the House that no one who joins CareShield Life will lose their coverage due to the inability to pay premiums. The government will provide means-tested premium subsidies for the low to middle-income Singaporeans as a permanent feature of the scheme. And for those who are still unable to afford their premiums after these subsidies and family support, we will extend additional premium support for them. In other words, the financially needy will receive additional support from the government on their premiums. Making sure that CareShield Life premiums remain affordable also requires a delicate balance between better benefits and the impact on premiums. I thank members of the House for their various suggestions on how CareShield Life features could be enhanced, such as higher payouts or allow claims for less severe disabilities. While these suggestions are well intended, we have to balance these enhancements against premium affordability, as they will lead to higher premiums. We also should bear in mind that insurance payouts are not the only source of long-term care funding. Personal and family savings, other government subsidies and safety nets and community support also play a role. This is the reason why the ElderShield Review Committee recommended that CareShield Life should provide a basic level of protection for Singaporeans. Those who prefer additional insurance cover have the option to buy supplements from private insurers using their Medisave savings, according to their individual preferences and financial resources. That said, ensuring that CareShield Life remains affordable is just one part of the larger picture. I agree with Dr. Chia Shi Lu, Mr. D'Souza, and Mr. Chen Shao Mao that we do need to pay attention to to maintaining and managing long-term care costs. We will continue to do our best to work with all our stakeholders to better manage our long-term care costs, but all of us will also have a role to play to stay healthy and prevent ourselves from falling into disability. Third, let me emphasize that CareShield Life, being a vital part of our future social safety net, must be sustainable for generations to come. To ensure long-term sustainability, each cohort will fund its own future needs through pre-funding. The scheme is not intended for the younger generations to cross-subsidize the older generations. Other countries have found such pay-as-you-go systems difficult to sustain. To be sustainable, premiums must also be priced according with sound actuarial principles. To ensure this, an independent council will be established through legislation to advise the government on premium and payout adjustments. I would also like to emphasize again that the government will administer CareShield Life on a not-for-profit basis. All premiums collected will go into the CareShield Life Fund and for the benefit of policyholders. If the real-life claims experience turns out better than expected, the savings will form part of the fund and policyholders will benefit from it through premium rebates, slower premium growth, or better payouts. Mr. Deputy Speaker, CareShield Life is designed to be an inclusive, affordable, and sustainable insurance scheme and a key pillar of our social safety net. It will work hand in hand with personal and family savings and government and community support to help our future generations of Singaporeans afford long-term care. We know, however, that some among our existing cohorts may not join CareShield Life. Others may need additional support beyond CareShield Life. And this is why we have decided to enhance our long-term care financing system in two other ways. MediSave will be allowed to be withdrawn in cash to support long-term care. Because the payout is in cash, it provides flexibility, whether one is cared for informally at home or formally through a provider or residential facility. We will set up Elder Fund, an additional government-funded safety net for low-income Singaporeans who are severely disabled and are in need of support. Together, these three initiatives, CareShield Life, use of MediSave for long-term care, and Elder Fund, form a comprehensive package of measures that will significantly strengthen our long-term care financing. I agree with many members that CareShield Life and the other two long-term care enhancements are not easy for Singaporeans to understand. We will initiate more communication and engagement efforts to explain the schemes to Singaporeans and how they can tap on them to support their long-term care needs. I hope that through this debate and our outreach efforts, Singaporeans will be more aware about their long-term care needs and start to think about their long-term care needs and to plan for it. And I hope that we will all have good health and stay active and free from disability. But should disability strike, we can have peace of mind that our long-term care needs are well supported. On that note, let me urge members of this House to support this motion and give our fellow Singaporeans better protection and better assurance through the CareShield Life. Thank you.
Mr. William, you wanted to ask?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I have clarification for Minister Gan Gin Yong and also for SMS Amy Khor. For Minister Gan, I think in his opening speech he mentioned that the government had set aside, I think, $2 billion for CareShield Life. I wonder if he could elaborate on what this $2 billion is set aside for. Is it premium subsidies or does it include also the admin cost of running the scheme or some other expenses? For SMS Amy Khor, my clarifications relate to the decision to have gender differentiated premiums for the scheme. She earlier mentioned that it was a difficult decision for MOH to make. So I'd like to clarify, first of all, that actually there is no impediment to designing the scheme on a unisex basis. In other words, it's a policy decision. It could have been designed to have unisex premiums, but the government has decided to take this gender differentiated approach. And the second clarification is, she earlier said that the MOH felt that to have gender differentiation was more fair on an actuarial basis. But does she also not agree that this is actually a missed opportunity for a policy to demonstrate important values such as mutual support and solidarity? Thank you.
SMS, Emiko? Sorry, Minister, you want to answer first?
So perhaps I answer the first question. The 2 billion budget was set aside by Minister of Finance at this year's budget, and more details will be disclosed later on. But this fund focused primarily on premium support subsidies, including transition subsidies as well as participation incentives. The budget is still being finalized, exactly how much, and as you can appreciate, the amount of funds that is needed also depends on the number of people who are a number of existing cohorts that will be participating, because some of the premium subsidies are allocated for the existing cohorts, and they have option to either join the scheme or stay with ElderShield. So the number has to be, the budget has to be worked out, and it also depends on exactly how many people come on board. But it does not include the running cost of the scheme. That will be separately funded, and I think that explains the basis of the 2 billion. But more details will be shared later on.
SMS, Emiko?
Thank you. Indeed, as I've said, it's not an easy decision to make for the ElderShield Review Committee, and obviously for us. So when we made our decision, it must be on the principle that the scheme will be sustainable in the long term. I think that is very important to ensure that the scheme is sustainable. So let me explain. Because at the start of the scheme, when we implement, CareShield Life is mandatory for future cohorts. But for existing cohorts, based on the various reasons that I provided, the decision was that it will not be mandatory, but we will want to encourage as many as possible to come on the scheme. So at the start of the scheme in 2020, for instance, in the first few years, the existing cohort is actually much larger than the mandatory cohort. That there is a potential for up to 2 million to be in the policyholders in the CareShield Life scheme for existing cohort. Whereas for the mandatory cohort, the first 11 batches, the estimate is about 600,000. So if we do not determine the premiums on an actually correct basis, what it means is that there is likely to be some adverse selection. Currently, the ElderShield premiums are already gender differentiated, so the men actually pay less than the women for same age group and income level. And if we equalize the CareShield Life premiums, they would know that they are paying more than actually determined. So some may feel that they would not want to join the scheme. There would be dropout. In addition, private insurers may also offer lower premiums for the men based on gender differentiation. Yeah? And that would mean that more would opt out of our CareShield Life scheme, and at the end of the day, it could be unsustainable. So I think what we want to do is to make sure that it's actually correctly determined. We note the issue about women having less savings, MediSave, and so on. We think that it is prudent to determine the premiums correctly, and then look at different ways to help the women. First of all, our means-tested premium subsidies actually already provide a higher quantum of subsidies for women because it's based on a percentage of the premiums payable. In addition, at the end of the day, anyone who is not able to pay for their premiums, if they opt into CareShield Life or if it's a mandatory cohort, government will step in with additional premium support. So no one will lose coverage because of financial difficulties. In addition to that, of course, actually for women, because they are more likely to become severely disabled as a result of longer lifespan, it means, as I've said earlier, that those who claim are likely to claim for a longer period too. In MediShield Life, for instance, women actually pay premiums on average for a longer period because they have a longer lifespan. But of course, then they are covered, over the lifespan. Yeah. Regarding the other point, sorry, what was it that you were asking me? Can you remind me again?
Actually, no, it was kind of connected, actually. The first question was about whether the scheme could have been designed on a unisex basis. That means there's no impediment, really. It's a policy decision, first question. And the second question is, while MOH justifies that as being fair actuarially, it's also a missed opportunity to show, for policy to show mutual support and solidarity.
As I've said earlier in my speech, that yes, we could have designed it based on equal premiums, but as I've noted, I think we feel that on balance it's more prudent to do gender differentiation because of the concern about adverse selection and the unsustainability of the scheme. But we will continue to explore ways to look at how we can help women who face difficulties, and we appreciate the fact. Regarding a missed opportunity, I don't think so, because besides having equal premiums, the fact is that family members, men, spouse, or any loved ones could already help the women with their premiums payment by topping up MediSave or using the MediSave to pay. So in fact, it is a very good opportunity to promote strong family values and support through the scheme.
May I request members to keep their clarification short and answers short as well. Ms. Chia Yong Yong.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to check if Minister was going to reply to my questions. I think I raised quite a number of questions. I don't really recall them being specifically answered.
My colleagues have answered most of it. I think Ms. Chia asked about universality, why not we cover everybody. I think some of my MOSSs SMSs have replied. I think Ms. Chia also asked why were we able to respond to the committee in 48 hours, 24 hours. Yeah. So let me explain that actually we have been working very closely with the committee, and the committee has always kept us updated on their deliberations, and they have also issued an interim update nearer the end of their deliberation, and therefore we started already working on premium support and transitional subsidies and so on, so that we hope to be able to give Singaporeans as complete a picture as possible when the report is out. So we have been working with them quite closely, and so by the time they released their report, it was no surprise to us. We already know, and in fact most Singaporeans already know what are the key recommendations. So I think that's why we were able to accept the report quite quickly, and so that the Singaporeans also will be able to know exactly what we have in mind in terms of premium support and so on. So I think that was the key consideration. I think you've also asked about how ElderShield premiums or CareShield Life premiums were determined on the methodology, and so I think SMS, she has explained that there's quite a number of factors involved, and we'll look at how best to explain this and share this with the industry, with the professionals in a meaningful way so that it's easier for people to understand, and including the assumptions that you talk about. And you also mentioned a specific suggestion whether we can integrate all the schemes to create synergy among all the schemes, ElderShield scheme, CareShield Life, MediShield, and CPF Life, and so on. I agree there are quite a lot of schemes, but we must understand that each scheme has a specific purpose. CPF Life, for example, is targeted at retirement adequacy to ensure that you have sufficient support for daily living. MediShield Life is focused more on medical care, which is very much service-centric, looking at medical services, whereas ElderShield and CareShield Life is designed to be targeted at long-term care needs. So they have quite different objectives, different targets, and different groups of policyholders as well. And their risk profiles are also quite different. So we did explore, to share with you a secret, we did explore the possibilities of integrating some of them, a different combination of them, but we find that it is going to be complicated because the risk factors are different and the considerations are different. Therefore, we decided to keep them separate so that it's easier to understand in each piece. And of course, it will mean that it will take us a lot more effort to explain. I think it's better for us to spend the effort explaining to people on specific programs rather than to try to integrate them and create a lot of more confusion. So we do take your point that there are many schemes and it will need time for us to explain clearly and slowly, and we hope that Singaporeans will bear with us. It does take time for us to explain, to reach out to Singaporeans. Even MediShield Life, when we first launched, we took 2 to 3 years before we could really explain what MediShield Life was about. And if you remember, we had great problem explaining integrated plan, how does MediShield Life interact with integrated plan. It also took us quite a while. So I hope you will bear with us. I've taken quite a fair bit of time because you had quite a number of suggestions. So I hope I've answered most of them, but should you have any specific one, you can raise it and I will be happy to answer.
Okay.
Ms. Chia, you all right?
Yeah, well, thank you, sir, and I want to thank the Minister for listening to my speech. So I just wanted to also raise a number of other points, perhaps, excuse me, that Minister hasn't quite answered. And I think what we want to be very clear about is what is meant by severe disability. I know we've often talked about the inability to perform the 3 ADLs, and it's always in the context of making a claim. But since we've used severe disability in the context of excluding people from CareShield, I think we need to be very clear, are we talking about also 3 ADLs or something else? Then in relation to the eligibility or for other assistance schemes, I also raised a point about whether we could streamline the application process. Again, I know SMS Core mentioned about one single assessment, but that is for claiming, not in relation to financial assistance across other schemes. Also, the other point would be on the entity that will oversee whether there will be overlays or gaps. Again, I know SMS Chi mentioned that it will be administered by AIC in collaboration with CPF Board. However, these two entities are administrators, so I would like to know which entities will be having the overall oversight. Would it be MOH, MOF, or is this going to be with MSF, a collaborative inter-ministry oversight? Yeah. Thank you. This would be my main. Thank you.
Minister, how long would you take?
I'll try to be as fast as possible. Starting from the last question with regard to the administration of the scheme, of course, Ministry of Health will be overall responsible, but AIC is the agency on the ground which is tending to the needs of the patients as well as those with long-term care needs. So they will be the front line, whereas CPF will be administering the fund largely. In terms of the application process, certainly we will continue to see how we can streamline and make a claim process easier, but when it comes to financial assistance, of course, we cannot do away with the need to do means testing. So I think the means testing process will still have to be on the ground, and our medical social workers and our MSF social workers will all be helping us. And we have also integrated the elder care, senior care for services on the ground by bringing a silver generation office into AIC, and we are expanding the community network for seniors. So there are quite a lot of efforts on the ground to streamline the care support for the seniors. On the severe disability, by and large, we refer to the 3 ADLs, and for the application to join CareShield Life, we encourage Singaporeans to join our CareShield Life as soon as possible, so far we try to include all of them, those who are not 3ADL, but please don't wait until you are 2ADL, then you decide to join. So I encourage you to join as soon as the scheme is available to you in 2021. Thank you.
Order. We have already spent 5 hours on this debate on this motion. I think there are quite a few clarifications required. So pursuant to Standing Order 25D, I propose to extend the time of this day's sitting beyond the moment of interruption for a period of up to 30 minutes. Engineer Dr. Libiwa.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask SMS Chi why the existing cohort can only join in 2021. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, I thank Engineer Dr. Libiwa for a supplementary question. The reason why we do it in phases is because for the scheme involving so many people, we need to make sure that the IT systems and the support systems are ready. So if you look at the mandatory cohorts, the scheme will apply to them first in 2020, we are looking at 11 cohorts, those aged 30 to 40 in 2020, close to 600,000 people. So we want to make sure that we have a system that is stable and we can manage the scheme efficiently for this mandatory cohort because they will have to come onto the scheme in 2020. And then once that is done, then we will extend it to all the other Singaporeans from the existing cohorts, and the numbers are much larger. I think earlier Dr. Amy Kaur shared potentially 2 million, but of course we don't think all 2 million will all join at the same time. But 2 million people potentially could be applying to join the scheme, and that's why we want to stagger it to make sure that the administration of the scheme, the systems are done properly. Thank you.
Mr. Pritam Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Just a quick question for SMS Amy Kaur, picking up from what you mentioned about loved ones topping up their spouse's MediSave. It's a point I raised in my speech about the prospect of the government providing a tax relief like it does for the special account, whether it could consider something similar for MediSave accounts, particularly in view of the gig economy, contract work. I think it was a point that Ms. Jessica Tan raised as well.
Yeah, I think for top-up, there are already some tax incentives, but it is accrued to the recipients. So actually, there are some tax incentives, but it accrued to the recipients. But we'll note your point.
Dr. Chia.
Just a quick question. I think with all these moves in the ILTC financing sector, are there any considerations whether this might impact the MediSave contribution rate or the basic healthcare sum? Thank you.
Nobody wants to answer?
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to highlight that we have done the calculations, and as I shared in my earlier example in the speech, for the future cohorts, Singaporeans, the premiums that they have to pay using the MediSave for both schemes like CareShield Life as well as MediShield Life should be enough to pay for the premiums without them having to fork out cash. But of course, we know every situation is different. There will be individuals who will need more help, and that's why we have other support schemes that they can apply for, including additional premium support. Thank you.
Mr. Peng Eng Huat, please direct who you want, which minister you want.
Questions for Minister Gan. Okay, this is on the scheme to allow members to withdraw cash from their CPF, from their MediSave account to support their long-term care needs. Is this scheme parked under CareShield Life? Means that person must be certified to need long-term care, then he or she can apply to withdraw cash from his or her MediSave? Or is it parked outside? Means anyone who needs long-term care can apply, and who will certify that the person needs long-term care? And the second question is that can that person use his or her family members' MediSave as well? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The cash withdrawal for under MediSave is not part of the CareShield Life, so you don't have to be participating in CareShield Life in order to tap on the MediSave withdrawal for cash for long-term care. If you are on ElderShield or if you are not covered, it is available to anyone above the age of 30 who is suffering from severe disability. That means you still need to be eligible as 3 ADL, and in addition to CareShield Life, if you have CareShield Life, if not ElderShield, if not MediSave, you can tap on it. So it is restricted to those who have 3 ADL. The reason is because we want to still ensure that there's sufficient balance in your MediSave, and therefore the use of cash from MediSave has to be regulated by the criteria. And the assessment for eligibility in terms of severe disability is the same assessment as CareShield Life or ElderShield.
Mr. Leon Pereira.
There's one more question about family members. Yeah, just to clarify that I mentioned in my speech that you are allowed to tap on the MediSave account of your spouse, but not your other family members. Part of the reason is also we want to minimize intergenerational transfer. So between you and your spouse, we allow you to share your balances.
Mr. Leon Pereira.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank the Minister and the 2 SMSs for your explanations. I just have 3 supplementary questions for SMS Mr. Chee Hong Tat. Firstly, I think the SMS Mr. Chee Hong Tat said that the committee will decide on how best to release information about the actuarial model to the public. I'd just like to ask if the government would, I'd like to ask again if the government would consider publishing the actuarial model in full, including details such as the assumed medical loss ratio, the expected rate of payouts in future, the capital adequacy ratio, and so on, for the reason that such transparency may actually be more effective to get public buy-in and may actually interest more people to voluntarily come into the scheme if they are not mandated to do so, because from that disclosure they'll be able to see that it's in fact a fair scheme and a good scheme, presumably. So that's the first SQ. The second one is I believe the position is that the independent council will have the discretion to decide on premium rebates. For ElderShield, I think there is some guidance given to the 3 insurers about when they give out premium rebates, how much. So would the government consider instituting some guidelines that would be binding on the independent council to guide them on how to give out premium rebates, when, to what extent? I think this point was made by some other members as well. And the last one is really in terms of the way the funds will be managed. If this is going to be managed by the CPF board, will the funds be managed in the same way as the CPF monies, where I believe the GIC plays some role in managing CPF monies through the instrument of Singapore government securities? Thank you.
So I thank Mr. Pereira for his supplementary questions. His first question about the disclosure of information by the Council on the model and the assumptions, I think I've explained that in my speech, that there are many factors, and we will discuss with the Council and the actuaries on how best to share the information, the details and the assumptions of the CareShield Life in a meaningful way. And I think it's important to discuss with the experts because it's a technically very complicated and complex scheme. For example, I think loss ratio, for example, it's not quite applicable for a scheme that is pre-funded. Loss ratios are actually more applicable to schemes like MediShield Life, where it is year by year. So you can look at what is the total amount of claims versus the premiums that you have collected, claims plus expenses versus the amount of claims you have collected. So that's more applicable for a scheme like MediShield Life, where you collect premiums in 1 year to provide coverage for that year. But for a pre-funded scheme like ElderShield and CareShield Life, actually loss ratio doesn't quite apply. So I just wanted to give this as an example to say that it's highly complex, and therefore we will discuss with the Council and the actuaries on what is the best way to share the information in a meaningful manner. Second question that Mr. Pereira raised about premium rebates. Again, allow me to clarify. There is a difference between CareShield Life and the previous scheme, ElderShield, because ElderShield First is administered by private insurers, and they are commercial entities. So embedded in their calculations, there will be a profit element. And this safeguard, in a way, is to prevent them from, if there's additional surpluses, that they will take the entire amount. So this formula of saying we share, 50% goes to the insurer, 50% goes back to policyholders through a rebate, you need to specify upfront, because otherwise the insurer would not subsequently agree to give it back to policyholders if you don't spell it out clearly. But for CareShield Life, it's different because government is going to administer. All the funds, all the returns, all the additional balance amounts will stay within the fund for the benefit of policyholders. That it is not for profit. There will be no disbursement out of the fund. So that's one key difference. The second key difference is that the current ElderShield scheme, the payout is fixed. So there is no way to return something to policyholders except through a rebate. But for CareShield Life, because the premiums, the payouts are designed to gradually increase over time, you can actually have more parameters that you can use to return some of this. If you have some additional balance amounts and you want to return it to policyholders, you want to benefit policyholders, there are ways to do it. So we are not ruling out rebates. That's one way. But another way would be to give them a higher payout or reduce the premium increases associated with the higher payouts. And the last question that Mr. Pereira raised about CPF investments, I think we will discuss with CPF board on what is the approach that they will use. But certainly, I think the nature of the fund is such that you want to go for stable returns. So this is an important consideration for long-term sustainability. Thank you.
I think we have spent half an hour on clarification. Maybe we ought to move on. The question is that this House endorses Paper Command 15 of 2018 on white paper on the ElderShield Review Committee's report as the basis for designing CareShield Life to strengthen our social safety net by providing Singaporeans with basic protection for their long-term needs in a scheme that is inclusive, affordable, and sustainable. As many as have their opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Deputy Leader.
Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that Parliament do now adjourn to 12 noon tomorrow.
The question is that Parliament do now adjourn to 12 noon tomorrow. As many as are of the opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.